Welcome, everyone. It's week 3, and the season's already throwing us some haymakers. We got some breakout stars, we got some early season letdowns. We've got all the analysis you need heading into Sunday. So let's transform the way that you watch the game. Welcome, everyone, to the Optimus NFL Show. That's right, it is the Optimus NFL Show back at you again for another week. I'm your host, Brad Bolt. Joining me always is my good mate, Dan O'Connell. Dan, how are we tonight?
Brad, we are doing well this week, as always. I'm excited for the week ahead. There's some interesting games this week, which we'll touch on a few of them, but it's going to be a really interesting game now. Some teams will start pulling away and separate themselves from the field, and a few teams are going to start looking a bit questionable for the playoffs now after this week as well. So, lots to get into.
Lots to get into, and we are going to start that off with the new segment, the Pigskin Pulse. Pigskin Pulse, we do have some quite significant news this week. We haven't had as lot the last couple of weeks, but we've got some big ones this week. Joe Burrow is out for 3 months with a turf toe and ligament injury, which he has had to have surgery on. So we saw him go down in the second quarter last week, and then Jake Browning was able to come in and play. I don't know if it's well enough because of the interceptions and everything he threw, but he led the Bengals to a win, which was a surprise considering that most people would expect with Joe Burrow out that they would have capitulated. But Dan, just give me your thoughts on this Joe Burrow injury and what you think the long-term outlook is for the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, it's obviously devastating, even just for general NFL fans, because you want your best players out on the field every week when you're watching it.
Mm.
So Joe Burrow is one of the best quarterbacks in the game. And it's just a massive shame that, yet again, he's looking at a big stint on the sidelines. So it's starting to become, unfortunately, a regular thing with him. And you're just hoping that the Bengals do something about that offensive line because they can't keep doing this with Joe Burrow. So, yeah, it's a tough one. Like, you think turf toe doesn't sound major, but every time someone gets a turf toe in the NFL, it's always a long layoff. And so
Yeah.
I'm honestly not sure we'll see him again this year because I don't know how
As
many games they're going to win without him.
No, and as someone who's actually had turf toe, who's not an elite athlete, it is one of the most painful things I've ever experienced in my life. It honestly felt like I had a broken foot and I could barely walk. Like, it was not fun at all. So if he's dealing with that it's bad enough that he needs surgery, like, he would have been in immense amount of pain on Sunday.
Yeah, so obviously it affects everyone on that offense now. Like Jake Browning's stepped in a few times in the past and he's been serviceable, but in that tough division as well, can he keep them afloat and get them to the playoffs? Which it's a tough ask because the Bengals just can't defend. So you're not going to be able to rely on your defensive side of the ball to keep them in games either. So yeah, tough season ahead now. It looks like for the Bengals.
Well, this is just the week for quarterback injury, so we've also got Brock Purdy at the moment as we're recording this. So we're recording this Saturday, the 20th of September, Saturday night in Australia, that is. So at the moment, Brock Purdy is questionable to play this week. He obviously missed last week, and Mac Jones stepped in, and the 49ers did get the win against the Saints. But so we're Brock Purdy's out. But then we've had the news come through today that the Commanders have ruled out Jaden Daniels with a knee sprain. That is also after last week losing Austin Eckler to a torn Achilles. So they're down a couple people, but having Jaden Daniels out and Marcus Mariota really throws a spanner in the works as to what the Commanders are going to be able to do. So give me your perspective on this Jaden Daniels injury. Do you think it's going to be a long-term thing, or do you reckon it's just a 1 week, let's rest him up and we'll go from there?
I have a feeling it's more of the 1 week type thing. But when you've got someone like Jaden Daniels that uses his legs as much as he does, it could
Yeah.
end up being a 2 week thing where they just don't want to force him back early, especially this early in the season. But like they're sitting at 1-1. They've got a game against the Raiders this week, which we're not going to dive into that game, but we'll come back to it in a later segment, just looking ahead. But yeah, I don't like if they go down 1-2, do they force him back early if he's not quite 100% next week? So it's one of those ones where they'll have to watch him during the week still and just see how he pulls up. But again, it's an injury that affects that offense massively. So it's unfortunate. We saw him get injured against the Packers last week. So it's just unfortunate. You don't want your best players getting injured, and two of the biggest quarterbacks in the game are out now for this week and beyond. So tough times, but next man up, you got to have that mentality. So we'll see how it plays out with Mariota there as well.
Yeah, it's just one of those things as well for me where I don't want this to turn into an RG3 type of situation where they rushed RG3 back too early and then his career, he was just never the same after that rookie season. We don't want that with Jaden Daniels. I don't think that will happen just based off of this coaching staff and the new ownership regime that's been there since Dan Snyder, but that's just not something that we want to see. So we hope that they don't rush Jaden Daniels back too soon. Dan, do you want to go through this next quarterback injury who is also out this week and what this might lead to for that team?
So we're looking at the Vikings here with JJ McCarthy out this week and for the next, I think it was 3 or 4 weeks.
I think 2 to 4, somewhere around there.
4 weeks. So not ideal. You don't want, obviously, the guy that they think's their franchise quarterback to sort of, at this point as well, to have that development sort of stall for a few weeks, especially with how he's played so far this year. They want him out there sort of taking as many reps as possible, but it also could be a blessing in disguise kind of thing where it just gives him a chance to step back and just see what he needs to improve on as well. So you get Carson Wentz stepping in. What's he got in him at the moment? Who knows? But who knows? Like Kevin O'Connell there, claimed as a quarterback whisperer. Can he get some magic out of Carson Wentz to keep them afloat in a tough NFC North?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because when you actually look back, JJ McCarthy's played one good quarter out of the 8 that he's played so far, which was that last quarter of the Bears game where they came back and won. So you could look at it one of two ways. One, that you could look at it that this could cause some issues by halting, as you said, getting him to not have these reps or anything. But it could also will serve as a benefit to sort of have him go, okay, I've had my 2 games so far. I know what I did well in the one quarter that I played really well. I know what I haven't done very well since. Now, granted, a lot of that is also due to the fact that in the last game, Christian Darrisaw wasn't playing. They had their backup left tackle playing, and then he ended up in concussion protocol, so they went to their third string left tackle. So you never want that as a rookie to have your third string blindside protector out there. So obviously that doesn't help, but it could be used as like a bit of a mental reset for him so that he doesn't get too in his own head after how he's played these last couple games. So, like we said, if you take out that one quarter, he's not been very good, and probably what he himself and Vikings themselves expected him to be. I think there was a lot more thought that he'd be somewhere a little bit further along than what he's shown. And now I know that sounds a bit harsh because it is only his second game that he's played, but I think, if you were asking the Vikings, why did you let Sam Darnold go when you could have franchise tagged him for one more year to get JJ McCarthy some more of those reps? They would have expected him to be playing a bit more like he was in that last quarter against the Bears than what he has in the other 7 quarters that he's played so far.
Yeah, it hasn't been ideal for him, and I guess you just sort of see how he comes back from it now as well. Like if he's out for, I guess, the longer end of that spectrum, that's 4 weeks where he doesn't play now. So how does that affect him for the rest of the year when he does come back?
Yeah, my whole thing, and then we can sort of move on into the games after this one. My whole thing that I thought with the Sam Darnold thing. Now, I know we had sort of spoken about this offline previously about whether they should have kept him or not. Now, I understand that the Vikings not wanting to sign him to a long-term deal, but it's one of those things that there's not very many teams who have won 14 games the year before, and then they just tell their quarterback, "You can go."
Yeah.
It's one of those things I would have thought, because the other thing is too. So JJ McCarthy missed all of last year, so technically his rookie year, he missed all of it with the knee injury. Generally, when you've seen the teams that have done really well with their succession plan, so like the way that the Packers have done it twice now, with Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love, or that you saw Kansas City do it when they went from Alex Smith to Patrick Mahomes. The main difference in all of that was that those quarterbacks who took over from the predecessor, they had been able to see, the coaching staff had been able to see these guys in practice. They'd been able to see them take reps. They'd been able to have them in the meetings, be there on game day, all of that sort of stuff. The Vikings were not able to do that with JJ McCarthy last year. So we had that story come out about how Kevin O'Connell he caught up with JJ McCarthy every week last year for mental reps to go through. Now that's all well and good, mental reps, but they're not actually seeing it in play. So my thought process was that I would have thought they would have tried to they would have franchise tagged Sam Darnold for one more year, with him going, okay, you won us 14 games or 15 games, whatever it was last year. Let's keep you again. Let's start you off, and then if you don't come out with that same type of quarterback play that you led us with the season before, then we can move on to JJ McCarthy after he's had a few weeks in practice. We've seen him work. We know we can then sort of in practice go, okay, JJ, we've seen what you're in your practice reps, what you're doing well, what we think you might need to improve on. Let's try and tailor this, tailor that, blah, 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 instead of throwing him straight into the fire. I personally would have liked to have seen him have, whether it be a season or half a season, as just the backup quarterback on game day who was there, and not have this sort of situation where he was thrown into the fire, and it's sort of like worst case scenario for the Vikings. He hasn't played fantastic, and now he's got hurt. So just would have, to me, just would have been, in my mind, now you might think I'm wrong in thinking that, but just in my mind, I would have wanted to keep Sam Darnold for one more year and have JJ McCarthy behind him just to give him that bit of rookie treatment of sitting behind the vet for another year.
Yeah, so in an ideal world, I think that should have happened, and they probably would have wanted it to happen as well. But the issue is, and I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm pretty sure the franchise tag was about 40 million or thereabouts for 1 year for
I think it was
Darnold.
30. I think it was 35. I think.
35, was
Yeah.
From what I know, haven't looked too much at the Vikings other than just to laugh at little things, but I know their cap number for next year is a disaster at the moment. I don't know if they were able to fit Darnold at the franchise tag number under the cap as easy as what I think people would have expected them to. And I think they would have had to lose a certain amount of players who would have been key for this team as well this year. So I think the salary cap situation played a bigger role in this more than anything else. Because like I said, I think in an ideal world, you would have had Sam Darnold still there. Let him go in a training camp. And if JJ McCarthy was good enough to take the starting job from the start of the year, so be it. And you've got Sam Darnold there as one of the best backup quarterbacks in the league. But yeah, it's just the way it's played out, like you said, hasn't been ideal. And then you also obviously don't keep Daniel Jones on the roster, who was there last year as well.
Yeah.
So now you're sort of bringing in Carson Wentz, and what you're going to get out of him, who knows? So it's just, yeah, tough to see when JJ McCarthy's been, I guess, so poor in those first two games. And then now copping this injury as well, where he could be out for up to a month. And if Carson Wentz struggles to keep this team afloat, then the Vikings are suddenly pretty much a lock to be out of playoff contention by week 6. So it's tough.
The only thing that I was just saying, where you're saying, like, you're right, like the salary cap would have been an issue. So at the moment, just looking at over the cap now, the Vikings have $15.7 million in cap space. But when you look at their team, they've also got Brian O'Neill, who's earning 26. His cap number this year is 26 million. That that could have been a restructure deal. Jonathan Grenard's at 22 million. TJ Hawkinson's at 16.6 million. Justin Jefferson's at 15 million. Andrew Van Ginkel's at 11.4. So like there are guys there. Even Aaron Jones is at 8.4 this year. Like there's some guys there who you could have looked at maybe rejigging their deals a little bit just to try and create that little bit of cap room. So then you would have been able to re-sign Sam Darnold onto a franchise tag for 1 year. That was my only thought. Like you've got some of these guys on bigger cap numbers, and you see the teams who constantly kick the salary cap can down the road, aka the Saints. But that's their whole sort of process. It wouldn't have been like we have to restructure and cut 7, 8, 9 guys to do that sort of thing. It's just like a couple of the main guys. Let's get some restructures done, create some of that room, and then we've got that backup plan from there. And like you said, losing Daniel Jones, who was in the building for the second half of the season, probably wasn't. That may have been their backup plan. Was maybe okay, let's have Daniel Jones in. Him and JJ McCarthy will be that, and then obviously when he got the call from the Colts, it makes more sense to go to that where he could be a starter, and we've seen what he's done with the Colts so far.
Yeah. No, it's just obviously hindsight bites you in the ass more often than not, but
Yeah,
it's just one of those things where you're not expecting the worst, and that's kind of how it's played out at the moment for the Vikings.
yeah. Well, that's enough for the news now. We're going to get into a couple of the games here. So each week what we're going to do is Dan and I are going to have the discussion about our teams. Then we're both bringing in a game each that we want to look at for the weekend, and then we'll look at the Sunday night, Monday night football games. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get into the keys to kick off. Keys to kick off, we are going to start here, Dan, with your team, the Green Bay Packers at the Cleveland Browns. I'll let you run through all of this, and then you can give your spiel on it before I just chime in with my 2 cents.
Yeah, obviously Packers are looking like one of the at least top 5 teams in the league, maybe even top 2, the way they're playing at the moment, 2 or 3. So there's a bit going on, though, for the Packers in this one. You look at the line and the odds, and that Packers are $1.21. Massive favourites, which you expect. Cleveland are $4.45. The Packers are minus 7.5, which, I mean, it's tough to win by more than a touchdown in the NFL, more than 8 points, but minus 7.5 seems awfully tight for the way these two teams are playing at the moment.
Yeah.
And then points total, I think this comes down to basically the Browns not being able to put points up comfortably, is sitting at 41.5. So there's a bit there. If you want to look at value there, there's a fair bit you can look at and hope when it comes to the gambling side of things. But I'll be looking at Packers minus 7.5, to be honest, looking at those. But the 2 big things for me are the injuries for the Packers, where he's questionable at the moment. I would say he'll be out, and that's Tucker Kraft with the knee that he picked up in practice a day or 2 ago, which he's been one of the best tight ends in the league to start the season. So having him miss the game will be a massive loss. And then obviously Jaden Reed, who got injured last week, will be out for extended period of time. So you're losing to your biggest wide receiving threats there with Kraft at tight end as well. And then last week we had Zach Tom not play, and it affected a little bit of what they did with Anthony Belton playing out of that right tackle spot. But he actually came good the longer that game went on and had some really good moments out there. So I would imagine that Zach Tom, with the oblique injury, I think he'll miss this game as well. So it's just 2 of our most important players, again, missing time, but it's the Browns. They've not been good this year. So I'm not expecting, I guess, any sort of trouble with this game from the Packers' point of view. It is just one of those sort of, I guess, trap games where you've had 2 insane efforts to start the season against massive NFC rivals in the Lions and the Commanders. Is this one of those letdown games? You go on the road for the first time this year, you're expected to win easily, And is it just one of those games where the offense doesn't click against what should be a really good defense as well? So I'm not expecting that to be the case, but it does have a little bit of trap feel about it, which can come up in the NFL season. So, yeah, I'm expecting 3-0 as a Packers fan. I wouldn't expect anything else out of this game, but we'll see.
Yeah, look, so as you said, the point total 41.5, so they're pretty much the bookmakers are expecting the game to be 25-17 is pretty much what the implied odds are by the line and the over-under. So I would be shocked if it was that, just because, as you've mentioned, the Browns haven't put up a lot of points so far this season. The Packers are a really good defense. As you said, without Tucker Kraft, without Jaden Reed, Tom, that might be not troublesome, but it might cause a little bit more concern because, as you said, they're close to elite guys in their position. So, but they're quality starters nonetheless. So you don't want to have any of your quality starters out. And there's a lot of people who were expecting maybe a little bit more out of Matthew Golden, but look at it. It's 2 games. He's not been very far away either time from catching a couple big plays here and there. And in that last game, the couple of those go his way, and all of a sudden everyone's like, "Here we go, Matthew Golden. This is exactly what we expect." And then it just didn't work that way yet. But this is where he may have his chance to stand out that little bit because there is no Tucker Kraft and Jaden Reed here. So
I won't get bogged down on the advanced stats for Matthew Golden, but he's been very close to an absolute elite start to his career.
yeah,
And balls just haven't been quite there for him. They've been close and they would have been monster plays, but it's just been not put there by Jordan Love, which he can have a tendency to do on those big downfield throws. So, yeah, I think people calling out Matthew Golden not living up to his first round draft pick status at the moment are jumping the gun by a lot. So,
yeah. No, I think he's going to be fine. I just think it's one of those things where a yard or two either way, and a yard his way, and suddenly some of those big catches, and everyone starts looking and go, "Oh, Matthew Golden, 97 yards in that game," and it's a different conversation that you have. So
yeah.
I would be going Packers here, and I'd even be tempted to take the points as well. There. It's honestly, it wouldn't shock me if this game ended up something ridiculous like 41-10, or you know what I mean? I could see something like that happening with the way that this Packers team can score.
Like, as good as the Packers have played, they've been almost perfect to start the season. This offense hasn't clicked yet.
No.
Like, they've just been doing enough to get it done, and they haven't scored over 30 points yet. And we know how explosive they can be when it all clicks. And yeah, the Browns have weapons on the defensive side of the ball, but when they can't move the ball on the offensive side, Packers are going to have plenty of opportunities to put up points in this game. And I don't see Cleveland being able to hang with them.
No, I am in agreement with you there. So we'll move on to the next game, which is my team here. It's the Atlanta Falcons at the Carolina Panthers. So the Panthers are $2.86 underdogs. Falcons are $1.43 favorites. The Falcons are minus 4.5 point favorites, and the points total is 43.5. Now, I did say to you guys all last week that I had suggested that the Panthers were a good shot of beating the Cardinals last week, and after the first 2 drives, I really thought that I'd have to come on here and just grovel. It started out really poor for Carolina, and then
Just that come through from you every time the Panthers play, they almost make my entire week, to be honest, because the amount of emotions that you go through just watching this Panthers team play, I feel bad for you, to be honest, because it's down, then all of a sudden it's up, and it's like, oh crap, it's back down again.
well,
And
it was the thing. So Bryce started off with an absolutely abysmal, fumble. It was just a fumble that was then picked up and ran in for a touchdown. And you go, okay, so they get the ball back. And then he has one of those absolute shocking interceptions where he goes to throw the ball and he sort of gets hit and it just loops up and the guy gets the interception, and you sit there and you think, this Cardinals defense is going to put the league to shame if they play like this every single week, because they were just, honestly, Bryce had no time to throw the ball whatsoever. It looked like he was screwed pretty much is what it looked like. And then all of a sudden, it sort of stopped. They had the half ends and there's some bad plays and you sort of think, okay, yeah, I'm only going to watch the first couple minutes of this next half, because then I'm just going to move on to another game because it's just not looking great. And then he came out in the second half and he was a different guy. It was insane. And, they were making their way down the field. One of my issues, though, was that, they were making this way down the field, but it was taking so long, a lot of these drives were just chewing up so much time. Then they get in an interception and you think, okay. And then, they score, and I said to you, I was like, oh, well, they're screwed, though, because they have to get an onside kick. They've got no timeouts left. And then they get the bloody onside kick, which is not happening anymore because you've got to declare it, and they somehow recover the onside kick. But then that last drive was one of the worst drives that I've ever seen, because you look, all of a sudden, it's fourth down, and you said you tuned in at that fourth down, and Bryce Young somehow has ended up about 37 yards behind the line of scrimmage, heaved the ball down, and it was either intercepted or it's incomplete on fourth down, and you think, right, that's done, but there's a flag on the play. There was defensive holding, so it's an automatic first down, so they move forward. Then I think the sequence of the plays was, it was defensive holding, then there was a false start, then I think there was pass interference, then there was another false start, then there was like an illegal motion by the Panthers, and then all of a sudden it was fourth down again and Bryce got sacked and the game was over. And it was just one of the worst drives I've ever seen from anyone in the NFL.
In the meantime, I've got I've got the quad box going on my TV, so I'm watching 4 games or 3 games in red zone at once. So I'm trying to watch everything and keep up with it all, and I missed the flag on fourth down. Panthers still had the ball. When I look back, I'll message you. I'm like, wait, what did I miss? And you've gone this. I'm like, what the hell is happening? And you're just all over the place with it, and it's just, yeah. The joy of being a Panthers fan at the moment is extremely up and down.
There was a couple positives that came out of the game. So the Panthers defense was much improved. Like, I know that the score may look bad, but when you think of it, I think in the first half there was one offensive touchdown in the first half, and that was a James Conner score, and then I think there was a Michael Wilson score, or it was vice versa, it flipped one or the other. But the defense held up pretty well. Now, held up pretty well compared to what they were last year. So they didn't give up a crap ton of yards on the ground, through the air. It was just one of those ones where they unfortunately let Kyler get away with a great scramble when they had him dead to rights for a sack to force it to fourth down, and he ended up with some 30-odd yard run that got him a first down, and their rushing looked a lot better than what it had been. So the defense looked better. It's still not fantastic, but it looked better. So it's one of those things where you go, okay, we can see what this defense could do. Now they just need to do it. Bryce had the shaky start, but he ended up having a career day where he went 35 of 55 for 328 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he looked... Once he got out of that little funk to start the game, I think he had 111 yards or 114 yards at halftime. So he threw for over 200 in the second half. He looked better. But there was also Jatavian Sanders had 7 catches for 54 yards. He's become one of Bryce's main targets. But the most impressive thing about everything was Teteroa McMillan looked like an absolute legitimate stud wide receiver 1 in the league. He had 6 catches for 100 yards, and he had the most insane one-handed snag that didn't count that I've ever seen. It was a reach around a defender. But did you see this?
No, I saw it after the game, but yeah.
but he's out of bounds, but he reached around the cornerback and caught it one-handed and landed out of bounds. And you sit there and you look at it and you go, my God, this guy is going to be an absolute problem for NFL defenses for years to come, because he was snagging everything and he instantly has become Bryce's favourite target. And it's something to give us Panthers fans hope that we've got a guy here for the future, where you look at all these other teams who've got these great receivers and these guys that you can look forward to watching on offense. Carolina hasn't had that for a while, probably since Cam Newton and Christian McCaffrey were there. So now that they've gone, to be able to have Tetero and McMillan there was a pretty amazing thing to watch. So that was the Panther side. Just quickly for the Falcons, that was an ugly game that they played. But Bijan Robinson was 22 for 143 yards rushing, and their defense was vastly improved. They actually had a pass rush for the first time since Vic Beasley had that 10-sack season. So they had guys left, right, and center getting sacks, and just their defense looked great. So I would love to be able to come in here and say that the Panthers are going to win. And in my mind, I am going to cross my fingers and hope that they do. But it's hard to see them just. I know they beat Atlanta last year at the end of the season against Michael Penix, so they can do it. But the only reason I have any pause for any of this is because I don't know what version of Carolina we're going to get, whether it's the first half against Arizona, Carolina, or that second half where they were just able to move the ball up and down the field at will. And I don't know if they're going to be able to do that against this Falcons team.
Yeah, it's one of those games where you're just hoping the Panthers play consistently well for the entire game instead of for just a quarter and a half type of thing. But like you said, that Falcons defense is really starting to look good. They're losing AJ Terrell for this week, so that's a massive loss.
Yeah.
And then, Michael Penix Jr. didn't have his best game last week, but they didn't really need him to against that Vikings team with how they were playing. So, I'm not expecting a Panthers win here, but it's another one of those games where funny things can happen. And I don't think the Falcons are an absolute lock to win this game. So,
no.
Panthers fan, I'm cautiously optimistic.
So just looking then, so with AJ Terrell out, that means then that your starting corner is going to be Mike Hughes, and it's either going to be D. Alford, Clark Phillips III, Natrone Books, or Billy Bowman Jr. So not guys who from the, if you're Carolina and you're thinking, okay, well, who's going to take on Tetero McMillan? It's probably going to be AJ Terrell. To have him gone is a massive win for the for the Panthers in that sense of not having to deal with that type of cornerback there. But that was obviously one of their big things that Atlanta invested in the offseason was the pass rush. So they obviously drafted Jalen Walker at pick 11, traded back into the first round by using next year's first round pick to take James Pierce Jr., and then signed Leonard Floyd as well to add to that defensive pass rushing unit. And it paid off for them last week. They just were all over the place. So the problem for Carolina as well is they are without Robert Hunt, who's gone on the IR with a torn bicep. So I don't know whether he's done for the season or if it's just like a short-term IR spot. I didn't actually look that up I didn't look to see that before we started. But then they also lose Austin Corbett, who it's a bit of a loss losing Austin Corbett as your starting center, but him and Bryce have been on a bit of a disconnect this year so far, and stepping into that spot is Cade Mays, who was actually the center when Carolina went in their run last year and played a lot better and improved, and Bryce was playing the best football that he's ever played. Cade Mays was actually the center for that whole time. So it's not as if it's guys, and Chandler Zavala is stepping in at right guard. So it's not as if these guys are newbies who's never played with Bryce before, so that makes it, for Carolina, it's like, yes, you're losing Robert Hunt, who has been one of the better guards in the league since he's got to Carolina, but at least you don't feel as bad by having those guys step in as they would have the last couple of years with their main offensive lineman out for a game or so.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where you want, especially for Bryce Young, you want that offensive line to be consistently available each week. And it just hasn't been the case for 12 months for the Panthers at the moment. So
Yeah.
it's an uphill battle this week. I like the Falcons, but yeah, I think it'll be close. I think the Panthers are right in it with a good shot. So it's just whether they're good enough and consistent enough.
Yeah. Maybe I'll just go out on a limb and I'm just be a homer and just say the Panthers. Maybe I should just say that.
Always go a picky team.
Yeah, gotta pick him. Yeah, JC Horn's going to shut down Drake London. That's what I'm going to. No, I'm not. He does play well against Drake London, but you know.
Does.
Next game here, I'll just run through quickly. It's the LA Rams at Philadelphia Eagles. So the Rams $2.55 underdogs, Eagles $1.52 favourites. The Eagles are minus 3.5 point favourites on the spread, and the total over under is 44.5. Then just want your thoughts on this game, even though it's my game that I brought to the table, but I just want to get your thoughts on it before we jump into the next one.
So Philly haven't been convincing this year so far.
No.
Like, they haven't clicked offensively at the moment. Jalen Hurts, I think the stat is he's only completed or attempted 5 passes of 10-plus air yards over 2 weeks, which is by far the worst in the league. So at some point, this offense is going to click, obviously. I don't know if it's going to be this week against a really good Rams defense.
No.
The Rams are $2.55, and I think the only reason that Philly are as short as they are is because it's in Philadelphia. Like, I'm genuinely thinking about tipping the Rams in this game. They're both 2-0. The Rams have looked better than the Eagles so far, in my opinion. Puka Nacua has looked like the best wide receiver in the game over 2 weeks. I don't know who's going to match up on Puka and who's going to match up on Devontae. But good luck, whoever has one or the other. Like, you've got Quinion Mitchell, who you would expect to take. I don't even know who they're going to look to take as
I'd say I would think he'd probably be taking Puka, I would say.
That's what I would expect the way the season started so far. So Devontae Adams could have an absolute field day this week.
Yeah, I would say so, because that means that then Devontae's lining up with Adoree Jackson on the other side, who last week Kansas City just attacked Adoree Jackson the whole game. So I think it's just one of those things that it might be difficult to actually, if Philadelphia actually send Quinion with, say, Puka, if they decide he's going to go on Puka. I don't know whether they send him with him the entire game, or if just Quinion Mitchell just stays to a side. And if Devontae's there, he takes Devontae one play, and if next play Puka's there, he takes Puka. That could be the other option they might do too. But then whoever, on that specific play, whoever lines up across from Adoree Jackson is probably going to get thrown the ball.
Yeah, it's a tough matchup. I don't know, this is a really hard one to tip for me, because I said it last week with the Chiefs. The only reason I tipped the Chiefs last week was they were at home, and I just couldn't see them going 0-2. And I got made foolish because they lost and they're 0-2.
Went 0-2.
Philly are 2-0. They haven't been convincing. To me, they're still the best team in the NFL until proven otherwise. Buffalo and Baltimore are right there with them. I think Chiefs have taken a step back, obviously, for a lot of reasons. The Packers putting themselves in that conversation, but got to see it more consistently through the year as well. This is a game where I feel like I'll tip the Eagles, but only because they're at home.
Yeah.
Like, everything to me points to the Rams playing better, being the better team currently, like in better form, and going into Philly because of that matchup where one of the wide receivers are going to have an absolute field day.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just Philly at home. I can't go past them, but it just shows how difficult this game is to pick, and I'd expect how good the game will be as well. I think this will be going right down to the last play.
Yeah, and I think that the Rams are just a tougher out to play week in, week out, as they are. My only concern for them, mainly, my only concern is Stafford, and if he's his health and him
Yeah,
moving forward. But if he can stay healthy in this game, if he just stays healthy in this game, to me, Stafford, that I wouldn't be shocked at all if the Rams win this. But then my main thought process behind this too is when it comes to tipping type of thing. If I tip Philadelphia and LA wins, I don't feel bad because I'm like, Philly's at home, they're defending Super Bowl champions, the Rams win. If I tip the Rams and the Eagles win, I'd feel foolish for tipping the Rams, going, of course the Rams are going to lose this one. They're on the road. They're
yeah.
playing the Super Bowl champion. Do you know what I mean? So that's sort of what it ends up boiling down to a little bit for me, is that I probably would tip the Eagles because they're at home.
This is the one, like, this is the type of game where you're probably head to head. It's tough because Philly is so short, but head to head, you're looking at Philly. But when you look at the line, you're probably taking Rams at 3.5 star. Like,
Yeah,
I'd
I'd be
expect
looking at that.
a field goal. So, yeah, I think you get some good odds for the Rams the start there, and you'd be somewhat comfortable going into that game with that.
Yeah, perfect. So, Dan, you can take us through your game that you brought to the table this week.
So this one, to me, is one of the most intriguing for the season. For the season this early on, because it's the Broncos up against the Chargers, and it's a divisional game. The Chargers are 2-0 within the division. They've got a chance to basically take a stranglehold of this division if they go 3-0 to start the season.
Mm.
And they're looking like a complete team at the moment as well. So, yeah, I'm excited to see how this one plays out. The Broncos' defense took a step back last week. They weren't as dominant as what we've expected from them. So, can the Chargers exploit that as well with how good Justin Herbert's playing? And can they get Amari and Hampton going in the ground game? Because if they can add that element to their offense, then they're going to be really hard to stop week in, week out. So, to me, I think the Chargers at $1.63. I think if you're taking head to head, you're looking at them. You're not really looking at the Broncos to win this game, just off the way it's played out so far with how good the Chargers are playing. But the Broncos at $2.28, Chargers don't have that much of a home field advantage. So they're juicy odds for the Broncos to try and steal one away from home in the division. So, yeah, $2.28 for the Broncos. Chargers $1.63. The Broncos given a 2.5 plus start. Chargers minus 2.5. The total points is an interesting one for me at 45.5. Are we going to see a lot of points in this game? Or do we see, I guess, both defenses really take control of this game? The Chargers have been really good defensively and haven't given up many points. And the Broncos defensively, we know what they can be. So is this going to be more of a defensive type of game where the points are lower? So a lot of intrigue around this game for me. I'm excited for it, to be honest. And I'm tipping the Chargers, but I can see the Broncos coming out of this one with the upset.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me if like I said, the thing with the Broncos that I just struggle with is on the offensive side is I don't know what the team is offensively, because they signed Portland Sutton to that massive extension, but then he didn't. I think he snaps at the last game. I think he played something like 60% of the snaps or something like that. You just don't know what's going to happen. Troy Franklin's getting a lot of the ball. Marvin Mims is involved. There's a flurry of running backs that get used. And I don't know the identity of this Broncos offense. At the moment, the way the season started for the Chargers, Herbert's in MVP type form, the way he's played so far. It feels like with them, they're given on a few certain things, and I say a few because it's actually probably a little bit more than what I was expecting before. So Herbert's going to he's going to run more this year than he has previous years, is what it's shown so far, early through the two games. Lad McConkey's still going to get targeted a lot. Keenan Allen is going to be the security blanket on third downs and for the important plays when Justin Herbert needs it, and he's still going to get plenty of the ball. And Quentin Johnston has turned into that first-round talent that everyone expected that he was drafted at. That's what's shown this year. Is
playing like a top 10 wide receiver in the league at the moment. Playing that well.
It's almost a given that every single week it feels like now, I know it's only 2 games in, but it feels like it's guaranteed he is going to be on the end of one of those deep shots, those 40, 50-yard passes. He might only have 3 catches for the game, but he's going to end up somewhere in that 70 to 90-yard range every single game with a touchdown. And it almost feels like a given every single week, and I sort of feel like that I can count on with the Chargers, and with the Broncos offense, I don't know what I can count on week to week. So that's sort of my thinking why I would probably go with the Chargers over the Broncos in this one. But once again, it's one of those things for me that if the Broncos win, I'm not going to be surprised whatsoever, because like we said, that defense sort of took a step back. We're going to expect them to be maybe a bit more impressive this year than what they've sort of shown so far, but it is early days, and they could come out and have an absolute defensive masterclass in this next week and bring the Chargers back to what we've sort of remembered them over the last couple of years, and it's just sort of a little bit of sizzle, but not sustainable.
Yeah, and with the Chiefs 0-2 start and struggling offensively and just struggling overall, like for the Chargers, even for the Broncos to go 3-0 this week, that's massive in that division. Because you're expecting the Chiefs to come back and become close to what they've been in the past and obviously compete for the division winners. But it's a big hole to climb out of if one of these teams are going 3-0, which they will be. But if it's the Chargers, they're looking really good to win the division, because I don't see much drop-off coming from the way they're playing.
They are playing pretty well. And you mentioned, now we'll move on to the Sunday night game. You mentioned the team before. So the Chiefs are at the New York Giants here. Chiefs are $1.34 favourite to the Giants, $3.29. The Chiefs are minus 5.5 point favourites, and the over-under is 44.5. Not much for me to say on this game, except that the Giants had one of the weirdest games last week against the Cowboys. Russ kept throwing everything deep, and it kept being caught by Malik Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson. But I don't know if they'll be able to do that against this Steve Spagnuolo Chiefs defense, and I think that the Chiefs will hold on in this one and get the win.
Yeah, you're not playing the Cowboys defense every week. And we know, they played well first week against Philly, but I think that comes down more to just first week of the NFL. You don't know what to get.
Yeah.
That game last week was ridiculous with the Cowboys and Giants. Far out. There's still so much going on. There's been so much talk about if Russell Wilson, Giants lose this game, is it now Jackson Dart's time? Do they put him out there, or do they continue with Russell Wilson if he does struggle? It's just coming off that game for Russell Wilson where he threw 440-something yards or whatever it was, and you're talking about him getting benched for Jackson Dart. It just shows how weird their season's been so far. So, yeah, I'm not picking against the Chiefs this week. I expect them to get on the board now. They need to show something, though, the Chiefs do, for their fan base to, I guess, feel confident about moving forward this season. I don't know if Xavier Worthy's back this week. I don't believe he is.
I'm not sure
Rashid Rice obviously still out. So you're losing your two big weapons offensively there. So it could be a struggle again for the Chiefs, but I just think they'll be too good for the Giants overall. So yeah, like you said, not a lot to say about this game, the Sunday night game. It's just going to be one of those sort of weird games again, I guess, with what we get from the Giants.
Yeah, what I'm hoping won't be a weird game is the Monday Night Football game here. The Lions are at the Ravens. This could be one of those ones that ends up being either a game of the year type of contender or an absolute fizzle out of a game because there's a massive blowout. It feels like there's no sort of, it's either going to be a really good game or a really disappointing game. And there's not one of those ones where it's like, it's on the edge and then it turns. It feels like it's either going to be touchdown for touchdown the whole way, or it's going to be suddenly, one of the teams gets 4 or 5 touchdowns in a row and the game's over at halftime and we sort of tune out a bit. But the Lions are $2.99 underdogs. The Ravens are $1.39 favourites, and the Ravens are minus 5.5 point favourites here. The total over-under on this is insane. It's 52.5, so they're expecting a massive scoring game. Now, Lions lose the division game round 1 against the Packers. It's week 1, it's a division game, it's hard to figure out what's actually happening there. Then they come back with one of the most impressive wins last week and how that offense played. But then you sort of look at it and go, well, that's a bit of Dan Campbell sort of saying to Ben Johnson, we can score without you here. Look at this. We'll just rack up 52 on you.
It's also,
Jared,
I think, a bit of fool's gold as well because it's the Bears.
yeah, exactly. And this is one of those things. It's sort of hard to tell what this Lions team is so far because they got trounced week 1, then they absolutely trounced the Bears in week 2, and you think like, okay, so they're probably somewhere in the middle there. But we're not sure how far, which way they lean. Are they more the type of team that we saw last week, or are they closer to the type of team that they were in week 1? The Ravens had an impressive win against the Browns last week, even though that Derrick Henry wasn't super impressive, but, they just score constantly. So
41 points. Their rate of scoring this season is off the charts.
yeah, and this Lions defense, I know they try to add to it. This Lions defense, I don't know if they're going to be able to stop the Baltimore Ravens. I don't know if anyone can actually stop the Baltimore Ravens offense, but I certainly don't think the Lions are going to be able to put the clamps on them. I think it's just literally going to be one of those games that this could be like the week 1 Ravens game where it's, the high scoring, high 30s into the 40s against each team, or like I said, it could be the Ravens 48 to the Lions 17. I could see both sort of happening, or vice versa. I could see the Lions somehow just scoring at will, and they have one of these games where their defense plays out of their mind. But I will be going with the Ravens in this one, just because I really struggle to see a lot of teams beat them at home unless they have some super heroic effort like what Josh Allen was able to do.
Yeah, I'm not tipping against the Ravens. I'm not sure when I'll tip against them again, but it's definitely not this week because Jared Goff isn't Josh Allen. As good as Jared Goff has been able to play the last few years, he's not in the same conversation as Josh Allen, obviously. And he's not in the same conversation as Lamar Jackson, obviously. So I think I will be taking the Ravens here minus 5.5. I think Ravens win this by a touchdown plus. And like you said, it's going to be high scoring. It's just how long can the Lions hang with the Ravens? Because we know the Ravens are going to go down the field and score at will. So the pressure's on the Lions to be able to back that up and do the same thing, and then to try and make a big stop. I don't see the Lions being close enough in this to pull it out, and I just think minus 5.5 is probably a little bit too short to not pick the Ravens by that. So
Yeah,
I think this is like a 38-31 type of game.
yeah, that wouldn't shock me whatsoever. So there are a few games that we're going to go through here. So now we are going to get into one of our favourite segments, which hopefully this is the week we're going to turn it around. It's time for the lines of scrimmage. The lines of scrimmage is our betting segment. Now, both Dan and I have not really got off to the greatest start, but this is the week we're going to turn it around.
Wrong randomly.
Well, this is the thing. So we're talking about this afternoon, Dan and myself, and we could go the real basic, let's just water everything down and try and just give you here's 4 legs that pay about $2, but we're not really trying to do that. We're trying to look into some of the bets that we really like that we would place that are going to give a little bit of value. Sometimes we're going to have massive weeks in the odds department. Sometimes they're going to be, under that $10 mark, but we're sort of pretty confident and we have reasons behind it. So I will go first with mine. So I've got a 4-leg multi here. Now you can probably bet these individually, or you could multi them together here, but I'll give you the odds for all of them. So first leg I have is Jatavian Sanders for the Panthers. 25 plus receiving yards is paying $1.92. Now he has had 27 plus receiving yards in his last 3 games that he's played, and last week against the Cardinals he had 54. So as I mentioned earlier, he is becoming one of Bryce Young's main targets. He's probably go close to being the second target, if not second. He's third behind Tedero and McMillan there. So I like Jatavian Sanders there for 25 plus yards. I have a CD Lamb anytime touchdown. So CD playing against the Bears, the Cowboys against the Bears. I just like him to be able to get into the end zone. We saw the Bears last week. They gave up 3 touchdowns, I think it was, to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Jameson Williams had his. I just feel like that Dak and CD had that good a connection. I don't think, I think CD would have been quite disappointed last week to, not have a bigger day. He gets a lot of the catches, the receptions, the yards, all of that sort of stuff, but I'm expecting him to come out and have a big game in this one. So I've got him for an anytime touchdown at $2.03.
The over-under of this is 50.5. So the odds makers are expecting a massive shootout. For CD Lamb to be anytime touchdown scorer over $2, smash that every single week that happens.
Oh, yeah. Because what did I'm just having a quick look. So his stats last week, so just looking at that. So CD Lamb was 9 catches for 112 yards and no touchdowns last week, which is a weird sort of thing you'd expect CD Lamb in that score where the Cowboys put up 40. You would have expected, if I told you before the week started the Cowboys were going to put up 40 points, you'd expect CD Lamb to have 1, maybe even 2 touchdowns, wouldn't you?
Yeah, easy.
So the fact he didn't get anything last week, I'm thinking he's going to have a big game this week. So CD Lamb, anytime touchdown scorer, $2.03. I have Calvin Ridley in the Titans versus the Colts game. Calvin Ridley, 40 plus receiving yards at $1.43. I picked that because Calvin Ridley's had over 40 receiving yards in 13 of his last 14 games. So based off of that, 13 of his last 14, he's got 40 receiving yards. He's become the favourite target for Cam Ward there with Elliot Iamani as the 2 main targets, but I'm expecting Calvin Ridley to have another big game and just get the 40 plus yards in that one. And then I have Baker Mayfield, 2 plus passing touchdowns against the Jets. That is paying $1.57. Now, Baker's had 2 passing touchdowns in his last 8 games that he has played. So they are my 4 bets there. So you put those together, that gives you $8.75 as the odds for that. So a $5 bet would win you $43.75 there. So just quickly recapping that. Jatavian Sanders, 25 plus receiving yards. CD Lamb, an anytime touchdown. Calvin Ridley, 40 plus receiving yards, and Baker Mayfield, 2 plus passing touchdowns for a win of $43.75. So that's my bet, Dan. So give me yours that you have.
Just as an aside, talking about Baker Mayfield, he's legit one of my favourite quarterbacks to watch in the entire NFL. He's just exciting to watch. You never know what you're going to get, but it's going to be exciting. And there was a play last week where he got tackled from behind, and it looked like I think it was CJ Gardner-Johnson off the top of my head, made the tackle.
Yeah.
And it looked like Baker was about to lay down injured, like legit injured. And then CJ Gardner-Johnson started chirping at Baker Mayfield when he was down on the ground. Baker Mayfield shot straight back up and got in his face and started chirping back. And you could see after it all died down, he's there limping back to the line of scrimmage then as well. But it was one of those things where you could tell he was injured. He was injured. He was down. And the next thing you know, someone's having a go at him and he's like, oh, no, I'm not letting that slide. And he's straight up and going at him. And it's just, that's who Baker Mayfield is. That's who he's always been. He's had that chip on his shoulder. And it's just awesome to watch. And, yeah, I just love watching it every week.
And the thing is, too, so this Jets defense, I like the Jets defense more when Robert Saleh was the head coach as opposed to how they've been so far with Aaron Glenn. Now, they're not bad by any means, but they're sort of looking at their team. So Jermaine Johnson is out this week, so they've got no him. So that means they're going to be starting Will McDonald and Michael Clemens as the two edge rushers with Harrison Phillips and Quinnen Williams in the middle. Jamie and Sherwood, Quincy Williams are going to be starting linebackers with also Cam Jones, I would say, would be the other starting linebacker. Then when you look at their defensive backfield, so they've got Sauce Gardner there. I've seen a lot of Jets fans who haven't been terribly impressed with Sauce Gardner over the last 18 months, I'd say. So we'll see what happens. But Tony Adams, their starting safety, he's questionable. Andre Cisco is the other starting safety. Brandon Stevens is your other starting cornerback. And then Michael Carter, the second, is the starting nickelback. He is questionable as well. So if they're without a couple of their starters in the defensive backfield, even if Sauce Gardner takes Mike Evans, Baker's been looking a lot for Sterling Shepard, Emeka Ibuka, Kate Otten, Rashad White. I wouldn't be shocked, or Bucky Irving to get like a receiving touchdown either. So they've got some guys there who, like I said, at the last 8 games that Baker's played, 2+ passing touchdowns, it sort of feels like it's an automatic. Nothing in the NFL is automatic, but based off of how he has played, that just feels like an automatic sort of bet that you could make there is Baker.
4-touchdown game for Baker, and you wouldn't be shocked.
No.
So, yeah, give me that 2-touchdown game. All right, so my one, I wasn't trying to go too crazy here, but then when I was putting it together, it got a little bit insane. And it's only a four-leg multi, but the odds are out of control. Matthew Golden, anytime touchdown. Now, call me a homer all you want, but we know the Packers are going to put up 20-plus points. That offense is too explosive not to. No Tucker Kraft, I'm expecting. We know there's no Jaden Reed. Matthew Golden has been one of the most elite wide receivers when it comes to separation so far across the first 2 weeks. He was close to 2 touchdowns last week. I think this is the week where he breaks out and has a massive game. And I've got him for an anytime touchdown at $3.45. Like, to me, that is way too good for me to pass up.
Yeah.
So that's my start, and we're going big. And I don't care if he's a Packer or not. Like, I'm taking that this week. So we start
100%.
off with that. And then I go to Jordan Mason anytime touchdown. There's no Aaron Jones. They're going up against a team that has no defense in the Bengals. And they've got Carson Wentz at quarterback. So I'm expecting a fairly heavy Jordan Mason run game for the game plan. And at $1.87, I'll pump that every single time when he's going to be obviously moving the ball for them. And if they get down into the red zone, I'm putting the ball in his hands and I'm letting him punch it in. So $1.87 for him, anytime touchdown. Now, this is where I've got a bit interesting. The Cowboys versus Bears, which we spoke about, over 50.5 points. Now, that's $1.95. to go over 50.5 points. Neither team can defend. They've shown that. The Cowboys, I guess, looked good in week 1 compared to what we're expecting. But then the Giants just put up whatever they wanted against them. The Bears have been awful defensively. And we know that they can put up points when they need to, when they're coming from behind. So I'm expecting this to be a high-scoring game. And 50.5, it's a massive number. But the Cowboys could put up 40 by themselves. Like, it wouldn't shock me at all. So we're not needing the Bears to put up 30 plus. So $1.95 for over 50.5 for the Bears and the Cowboys. And then this one to me stands out. Because I don't know what the odds were when Jaden Daniels was trending towards playing, or if he was or not. I don't know if it's shifted much in the last day or 12 hours or so. But the Raiders to win without Jaden Daniels there for the Commanders, $2.28. Like, to me, I don't think the Commanders are that much better than the Raiders without Jaden Daniels there. And there's no Austin Eckler either. So where does their offense come from? Like, Marcus Mariota, he's a good veteran quarterback and he can step in, and we've seen him step in and win games. But I don't know. I just think this Raiders team is better than what they showed last week. And I think this could be a massive get-right game for them. Massive get-right game for Geno. And we could see Ash and Genty have a big breakout game as well. So I don't know if the Raiders are, the Commanders are going to put up enough points with Marcus Mariota at quarterback. So I'm taking the gamble here. Raiders winning at $2.28. So we've gone a little bit risky, but I still like it. So the odds of that are $28.68. So my little $5 bet is going to get me moving for the year and put me up massive. And we're at $143.41 payout for that. So, yeah, there's they're gambles, obviously, but tell me I'm wrong, but that looks pretty damn good for something that's paying so much.
Yeah, well, while you were talking, I just went and put all 8 of these bets together to see what the odds are, and the odds are $199.13 to 1 that all 8 of these hit. So I'm thinking that we should put $5 on this and win $1,000, because that's pretty much what we would win if that comes in. So
Yeah, sweet.
let's do all 8 of them. I like it.
Make up for the first 2 weeks and just go massive here.
Exactly. See, that's the point. That'll put us so far, and we'll be stoked with it. We'll go, yeah, that's exactly what we wanted.
Setting up a little cushion for ourselves.
Exactly. That's exactly what we want. Exactly. But no, like you said, this is the thing though. So when we are looking at these, like I said, we're not trying to do everything because I was just looking here, like I could go, let me see, what was the last game I was looking at? So the Dallas-Chicago game. So as we're saying, we're trying not to go the most basic stuff possible. Because I could give you, where is it? CD Lamb, alternate receiving yards, 40 plus yards is $1.09. Like, I don't want to give you 5 bets at all under $1.10, and then suddenly, you're like, okay, so we've got a 5-leg bet here and it's paying $1.94. Like, we're not trying to do that. We're trying to actually give you guys some stuff where we are happy with our research that we've gone into this and to why we're sort of thinking this, and give you a little bit of value. Because like you said, so we've given you 8 different legs there. Now, you could mix and match some of these if you wanted to. You could go the Matthew Golden, Jordan Mason, CeeDee Lamb, anytime touchdowns. That'd be, that's a good bet there. You could add Baker, Calvin Ridley, and the Cowboys Bears over 50.5. You know what I mean? So what we're doing is we're trying to give you a couple of legs here that you guys could take what we've said, put yours together. Maybe you've got some really good bets that you've put on yourself that you can drop in the comments below. We'd love to hear your bets that you've put on. We'd love to see what you're sort of thinking. So, if you guys can tell us what you're liking this week with some of the bets, whether you like ours, if you think we're going too hard too early with some of these, and maybe we should stick to a few more of those $1.10 type of prop bet sort of thing, would be great. But I really like, I like, well, Grant, I like mine a little bit more than yours, just because yours you need a little bit of luck with that Raiders win, because you never know what that Raiders team could pull out from week to week. Other than that, I do like the Jordan Mason TD, the Matthew Golden options there. But I think, if we happen to get lucky in all of this, we'll both be happy because we'll both be rolling on this year, and we'll be we'll made up a little bit of money than what we've lost in the first couple of weeks.
Definitely. We're still confident. We're still feeling good about what we're putting together, even though it hasn't paid off so far. We're not just throwing shit at a wall here. We are looking into things and, coming up with bets that we actually really like as well, and we're standing on it and putting it on ourselves. So, hopefully we can come out of this week and be happy instead of looking back and going, well, if this didn't happen, then maybe. Hopefully it all just falls our way this week.
That's it. We just hope that we get a bit of luck and it falls our way. So we can get out of here for the week on this after this, guys. So Dan, have you got anything you want to add before we finish up for this week?
No, like I said, there's a bunch of intriguing games this week where it can kind of go both ways, and we haven't touched on all, obviously, but I think it's going to be a really good, fun week to watch the games this week. So excited to see how it all shakes out and start to get a good gauge of what teams are looking like they're going to be playoff teams and what teams are going to start, I guess, looking towards next year, even though it's still super early. You can kind of put a line through some of the teams being playoff contenders even this early. So, lots to watch this week and lots to look forward to.
Yeah, you're right. So I think there's only been maybe a couple of teams ever who've started the season 0-3 who've then made the playoffs. So generally, if you're at 0-3 after week 3, you can pretty much kiss your season goodbye a lot of times. So you don't want to obviously write off every team, but that's sort of the reality for a lot of these teams is if they don't hit that win this week and they end up 0-3, you could probably start focusing a bit more on college football so you can prep for the rest of the season.
Picking up the numbers for the rest of the year then.
Exactly. But no, that'll do us for this week, guys. We hope you have enjoyed this episode, that you stayed with us the entire time. We have had a lot of fun, again, as per usual, Dan and myself going over all of this and placing our bets and looking into some of these games. So on behalf of Dan, myself, everyone at the Optimus Fantasy and Optimus NFL show, we would like to say thank you. And thanks for tuning in to the Optimus NFL Show, your ultimate destination for football transforming the way you watch the game. Bye for now.